Commission before he goes back into the field because of the violent scenes we saw when he last went there. And we made it very clear to the Electoral Commission that they cannot organize an election where people are battered, people are clobbered. You saw the videos of our supporters, many of whom are still in hospitals as we speak. You saw how Honorable NALUKOOLA was treated on the nomination day. We complained about the abduction of the gentleman who had his nomination forms and all that. And the Electoral Commission said they've also been seeing these things, and they raised them with the police when they came in the meeting they had. What we told them, the central demand was that the Electoral Commission should take charge. That was the central demand. That right now, what we see is different people coming in to do whatever they do. Jat is there beating up people, and then the police comes and says those are not part of us, then the military comes and not part of us, and everybody keeps asking themselves who is deploying these people to do these kinds of crimes against our people. We talked about what has been happening in all by-elections, the ballot stuffing, the rigging that takes place in many places. We also talked about the voter register, which we think is inflated. We talked about the fact that from the last election in 2021 up to now, if you see the increment, in 2021 the voters in Kawempe North were 164,052 voters, registered voters in Kawempe North Division. Right now there are 199,342 registered voters. We complained about that. We said we think that this increment is abnormal, an increment of 21%, which represents 35,000 new voters. And we have seen this happen in other by-elections, including in Busongola, in Oyama and other places, where every time there is a by-election, these NRM people have a way of getting people who are in their books or supporters, picking them from other places, so that they do a lot of failing voters. And I think the media covered in Omoro, for example, and Oyam, you people covered how people are being transferred from other districts to come and vote in that particular by-election. So we condemned that very, very strongly and said and requested to look at this register now the way it is. You know, they were talking about the fact that, there was to give you a full picture. You need to have a full register for you to get a full picture of what the register looks like. Because when there's a display and they say, you just see these names of these people, but now we've been able to compute, our electoral management team has been able to compute and realize that these are, the increment is abnormal, and that is something we raised. We talked about the attack on journalists, ladies and gentlemen, and condemned it in the strongest terms possible, and said that journalists are there, to cover what is happening. If the regime does not want journalists to cover their crimes, they should stop committing crimes. Don't beat the messenger. If you know that beating up people is wrong, don't start abducting or arresting journalists and telling them to delete footage, like we've been saying. We've talked about the NUP supporters who are being targeted for putting on our overalls and other uniforms. You've been seeing on the campaign trail that NRM candidate wears an overall, a yellow overall, and all our supporters move in overalls. But when people put on the red overalls, they are picked up, they are brutalized, they are arrested, and so we tasked the Electoral Commission, because it is the overall, it has a mandate of organizing free and fair elections, and we tasked them to liaise with security on this issue so that they tell us, is it illegal now to wear a red uniform in this country? Is it illegal to wear an overall? Initially they were talking about berets. Now they're even going for overalls and forcing our people to remove them. You remember what happened to Honorable Abdallah Chiwanuka? Honorable Nyeko, when he was picked up, he was also forced to remove the overall he was putting on, and many other people that they pick up and force them to remove this. We've talked about the numberless cars that we've started seeing. The Electoral Commission had made a commitment that will not see those, but you people who have been in Kawempe North, you've been seeing the numberless vehicles there, and we've talked about that as well. We've talked about a certain polling station, UCT, which the residents have been complaining is past the quarter guard of the barracks, and they've promised to follow that up and ensure that they give us feedback on that. We have tasked the Commission to ensure that our people who they are being read are not arrested. You people have already seen in by-elections, when someone tries to record, gets out their phone to record, as they read the results, you know what normally happens. They are arrested, their phones confiscated, and all that. We've talked about the question of pre-ticked ballot papers, and this is a very, very important issue. We asked the Commission, where do these ballot papers come from? Because we believe that ballot papers are produced and stored by the Electoral Commission. How come in every by-election we see people with pre-ticked ballot papers? What happens to those people who are arrested with ballot papers? Because in every by-election you have been seeing, you will find someone, whether RDC, so there was an MP who was picked up for pre-ticking ballot papers and all that. So our question was, what happens to those people? In Oyam, you remember there was even a confrontation between Tango Doi and Jimmy Akena, the president of UPC. There are people, because they found people with pre-ticked ballot papers. So the question is, where do these people, the Electoral Commission is saying, you know, we are not the ones. So we say, where do they get these ballot papers? Because you are the ones who produce and store these ballot papers. So where do these people get them from? But also when you pick people with ballot papers, or when we arrest and hand them over to you. Because in many cases, with pre-ticked ballot papers, we hand them over to the Electoral Commission and police, and our question was, what then happens to these people? So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the main issues, but there are others. Of course, there are other issues that we're talking about, largely focusing about the violence, talking about the double standards, because we've asked them, why is it right for the NRM candidate to do a procession and other candidates to do processions? You've been seeing them. Sometimes with when NUP comes in, they say you are not allowed to do procession. So we talked about the double standards as well, which we believe are criminal and wrong and amount actually to electoral offences. Yeah, and what was the response of the Commission? They, of course, they promised to look into these issues. I wouldn't say that we expect a lot of changes in the conduct of security forces, because even the Commission was saying that, you know, we are not the ones who deploy those people. We are not the ones who deploy them. So we may not expect much, but for us, as NUP, we believe in putting things on record. So we are happy that yet again we have come and gone on record on these issues. And we are asking the Electoral Commission, very importantly, take charge. Don't say that because we don't deploy those people, for an election to be described as free and fair, all actors are involved. So if the Electoral Commission says we are not the ones who deploy the military and therefore we don't know how they come in, so who should we run to if the military comes and starts beating up people? And then the EC says, you know, those are